Naudin.
Nope. Nope. Cheri Naudin.
Okay, you heard
Yeah.
it directly from Cheri Naudin. Okay, now when we started last week and we, really introduced Cheri, to the YouTube channel and the YouTube world, I never realized or anticipated the amount of text messages and direct messages. So it was really a fascinating experience being, so heavily involved with the baseball world. And so, first and
Thank
foremost,
you. I appreciate
thank
it.
you, Cheri, for taking the time because I think parents genuinely loved you're very candid, very sincere, and obviously very knowledgeable. So, welcome. And parents have sent me questions. I hope we get to answer the vast majority of them here today. Um, First, how was your week in softball this past week?
Well, I just did a TikTok about it, and I said it's that time of year. You got high school ending, you've got playoffs, you've got some high schools in across the states just getting started with their season, and now you got the portal. You got a lot of crazy going on. You got what I call the quitters and the unhappy people. So I fielded a lot of calls this week. So I did a TikTok about it to say, hey, there's some basic things you need to consider before you make moves because I really respect the timeline. And there's a certain time in a student athlete's life that they're valuable in this process. Like I had a 2026 wanting to quit. I said, why would you quit something that hasn't quit you? And I think what happens is they start to see that they don't get the big school, they don't get the dream school. And I wish parents would really take their kids off of that's my dream school, because I think you actually damage their possibilities of being student athletes and being successful where they can play. So those are some key words there.
We just recently spoke with Kevin Griffin at Bellhaven, and he uttered that same exact sentence that the vast majority of families, they get this cloudy vision of whether it's Oklahoma or an SEC program, LSU, Florida, Alabama. And then when the realization comes, it's kind of like a disappointment or the air comes out of the balloon. So I want to kind of start there with regard to the realistic expectations, but most importantly, the evaluation. Who should parents seek out for an evaluation? Let's say they're not close to you in Texas for CSA to do a proper evaluation. How are families going to get a true idea or indication what path or what level their student athlete should be able to play or can be able to play at the collegiate level?
Well, I think you and I discussed a little earlier talking about numbers and stats, but I'll give you the antithesis. I hope I say that word right. Of the reason I do what I do is because it's the college coaches that pick. It's not you and I. It's not mom and dad. You don't get to come up with your list of 5 or 10 and go, I call it push the soda buttons on the
Right.
machine and get your Diet Coke. And then I have another funny one, and I don't mean to offend people, but I said, but it's my dream school. And they put their little crown on their daughter and put her in a little ball gown and they take her to Disneyland and they get to dream. Well, if you're trying to pick a college and you're trying to make mature decisions, and I think we're past maturation of dream school, you have to go to realistic schools and realistic expectations. And then not all colleges pick the same thing. So on the stats, I am very cautious. I'm a master marketer. If we are pushing out content with stats on it, are we giving exposure or are we giving them exposed? So
I
if
mean,
you don't, yeah,
that's
if you don't have the
critical.
1% numbers and you're not the fastest kid in the top 1% or you're not the biggest overarm throw, but we already know that.
I think parents need to understand when Sherry says top 1%, let's just give it a bigger number, top 5% in the country. That is ultimately, those are the athletes that are playing at the higher levels of college athletics. It's just a fact.
Mhm.
And one of the things where there is symmetry or some sort of, kind of balance between baseball and softball, as Sherry and I were discussing prior to our talk here now, it truly is about talent. It's not something about is the character really great? Are the ancillary skill sets or good teammate, quality position player? You have to have talent. And so if we're looking at college athletics, older, stronger, faster, they're better prepared student athletes. So can you talk about that when you're working with college coaches with CSA, which is collegiate? Talk a little bit about your interaction with college coaches when you're presenting a student athlete. What are some of the questions that those college coaches are asking you when you're calling as a CSA referral for a student athlete?
Well, again, I flip flop it. My whole program is to get college coaches to see them play. So creating proper content, not barfing weekly, highlights up on Twitter, because they're not happenstancing rolling through Twitter hoping to find you, right? So I try to package it up to where they have highlights. And some coaches are like, no, I want to see everything about them. Well, no, you don't. Not until they're on your list and you really are digging deep. Then, hey, coach, can you get me some bullpen video and let me work with their pitching coach. But this evaluation of the talent for the elite level, and I'll play with you on the 5%, because 1.5% go D1, 1.5% go D2. There's your 5%, people. Now there's 425 D3s. There's junior college. There's NAIA. I think a lot of people are missing out on the value of
Amen.
NAIA. Yeah, I love it. So a coach isn't calling me saying, hey, Cheri, get me a kid who throws 72 miles an hour overhand. Now, on the flip side, I got a list going already of all the coaches that call and say, Cheri, I need somebody who throws in 65 miles per hour as a transfer. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll get right on that. Because if they're throwing that and they're doing a good job, they're already with a program that's taking good care of them. There's a grandioso dream that people, any of the recruiting systems out there, are just sitting on talent with big numbers. I've seen big numbers not be able to throw a strike. I've seen moms and dads that self-promote their kids with all these numbers and all this, great stats that can't play the game. So my daughter's a Division II coach. I'm friends with most of the softball coaches, or at least connected with them. When they call, they're not saying, hey, Cheri, I need a catcher 72 miles an hour overhand. Yeah, I got one of those, but she doesn't hit over 200. So, what do we do? So, coach, come see the kids play, because Walter, you might like a kid different than I like a kid. And a coach might say, hey, this is when those intangibles happen. Hey, the dad's crazy. Let's walk away from this kid. Hey, the mom's posting all over social media trying to self-promote them, right? I think that's the biggest danger. I told a parent the other day, the more you maneuver and manipulate from a parent perspective, the more you actually damage your kid.
Well, I speaking with all of the college coaches now. Again, Cheri, just to reiterate, Collegiate Sports Advocate. She
Yep.
works with all types of sports, all types of athletes, all throughout the country. I let parents know right out of the gate. Cheri works with baseball players, soccer players, lacrosse players, but we're talking softball, and I think there's some synergy with Cheri and I as far as philosophies. And one of the things that Cheri just alluded to that I don't think enough families truly are taking enough time to research is NAIA athletics. Really good academic opportunities, affordable college opportunities, and athletically, especially at the Division I level of NAIA, it is a comparable to some of what we might call the mid majors. I don't know if that's a thing in softball, but can you talk a
Mhm.
little bit about your interaction with regard to the NAIA coaches and they're really getting engaged and involved with active recruiting now, not only with softball but all sports?
Well, I think people forget that every division and every type of conference has their own College World Series. And I don't think we promote it enough. Last year, one of my kids won it. I mean, it's amazing. And so going through that journey and going through the path and the experience is more important than the name on the door if you're not getting that experience. So you can go to XYZ Power Four school, be on the bench and not be experiencing the same greatness as you would if you were an impact player. My daughter played for the University of Kansas. They were horrible for 2 years. I mean, we got beat up. And then they went to regionals 2 years. It was fantastic. So finding that fit, and especially NAIA, because I think you're getting a balanced approach. You're getting a student athlete, academic. Some of my happiest kids. I've got one graduating from Sterling College in Kansas. My aunt actually works there, which was just ironic. But it's amazing college and experience, and it's a good family culture, and it's in a great small town in Kansas. But I think the problem is, Walter, these people sit back and they think they get to choose. Get out there and get maximum exposure and let the colleges pick your student athlete. And that's the issue. They think that, they get very educational or studious about it. Well, I'm going to match my kids uh, uh, what are they? I can't even think of it. Their major, because they should not have a major selection just yet. They're
Right.
too young, you know.
And I think I want to kind of go down this a little bit, because a lot of times when I'm interacting with parents, they'll always say, well, my son competed against this team and they have a bunch of Division I commits and he dominated. So therefore, my son should be able to go to these schools because he's as good, if not better, in my opinion, as a parent, than those guys. Can you talk about, at the end of the day, as you just so eloquently said, the college coaches are the ones that are compensated to not only evaluate, but to recruit athletes to make their program as competitive as possible. Parents, we don't really play a role with how college coaches are evaluating our student athletes.
Correct. So I would say, one, they have faith in you, Walter. They call you because you're going to be honest and direct and give them the right information. And I think they do the same thing with me. I'm not going to pull their strings and tell them, oh, yeah, this kid, competed. I'm not going to give that data that the parents state, because what happens for you and I is we see the top layer. We
Right.
see the national footprint. We're not just looking at our local high school. And it's the funniest thing when parents call me and say, well, my daughter plays B or C ball. That's a stab in the heart, because that means you don't even understand that there's a top echelon. And then soccer, my other daughter was a college soccer player. When they say, oh yeah, we're playing in the local Highlands League instead of my kid plays ECNL or academy level, then they don't even know because they've never faced it. So this is the part parents need to understand, is that the travel teams, the clubs, they're already right sizing. And that's where they have the relationships with the college coaches. They're already right sizing. You talk about Corona Angels or Hot Shots. They're already validating who can play at that level. So they're raising them up, then they're coaching them up. This is where your travel team or your club really matters. Can they prepare them to actually play? There's clubs that do some good talking and they get a kid on the team that never hits the field. And then guess what? Those coaches never come back to that club again. And that happens more often than you would know. I can count it because I see it every day. And I think you actually do a disservice. So parents and clubs who do the selling and try to hype and pitch a kid that, this grandioso success, and yet they're not prepared to play when they get there. That's a disservice. I've seen coaches get fired. I actually joked I should start a pool and let us all bet on which coach is going to max their 4 years and be done, because you can see it in recruiting. They just make bad picks.
Well, I think this leads into the how do you choose the proper travel slash, because I say this, with regard to baseball, nothing that has happened in years past, and I say years past, prior to 2024, is really applicable with regard to recruiting. In today's world of the portal, the JUCO athlete, the academy slash postgraduate student athlete, the athletes for all sports, not just men's, women's, all sports, older, faster, stronger, more athletic. The level of competition is rising fast. And so no one is trying to kick the high school athlete to the curb. You simply have to begin to balance your playing schedule with your preparation, your skill set development, your strength, your foot speed, all of the things that go into making a college athlete. So how do parents really take the time, or how can they help their student athlete when it comes time to pick the right travel organization or club team for their softball athlete?
100% go out to tryouts. I had a young lady in Southern California afraid to go try out for the three biggest clubs there. And I said, why? I said, you're automatically right sizing yourself and getting the no that you're afraid of. I said, go put on your inner tiger, go try out, let them decide and let them help you if you can be next level. And I said, otherwise, you've already next leveled yourself right down
Right.
into the 99% box, right? So I said, go out there. I said, if they say no, this is the challenge with female sports more than men's, is my experience. They take it personal. Oh, they didn't like me. No, they don't know you enough. They're looking at your talent level, the product that you bring to the table. Same in college. These coaches aren't disliking you when they're putting you on the bench. They're saying you're not providing enough value to the sport right now in this position and in this role. And that's where the breakdown is with communication. I don't think the student athletes are having mature conversations with their coaches, with their parents, right? And again, I can tell when a parent's writing the email. And I had one parent get upset with me because I make snarky TikToks about it. You can't write that stuff and think that a kid is going, oh, and I bat in the 3 spot and my on base percentage, and in high school I just, like you said, faced the biggest best kid. Parents, it's such an eyesore, and the parents don't get it. And I've had this conversation, and I have one parent that gets mad at me and flat out said, you don't like me. And I said, no, sir, it's not that I don't like you. I don't like what you're doing. And so you have to think about the college coach as a decision maker. And if you're in business of any type, as a family, as a parent, what is the decision maker's criteria? And they're not going to come tell you that, because it's going to sound cliche. Oh, we want the best hitters. We want the best fielders. We want the fastest, the strongest. And back to your point about bigger, faster, stronger as a transfer or coming out of junior college. My youngest daughter was 5'9" going into college at 180. 145. She came out 5'10", 180 with the muscle in her legs. She looked like a linebacker playing soccer. So I think they have to work earlier and get an understanding. Like, I support Sierra Romero. It was a kid I coached in 10 and under. She was pro in women's softball. I think she's playing AU again. She has an app. Train online with a pro. Are you kidding me? And my student athletes get a discount for it, because the top layer is not necessarily in your neighborhood where you can practice. I'm in Dallas, Fort Worth. It's 2 hours across the metro to the other side. So we don't necessarily have midweek practices. We give them as optional, but we get kids from Austin, 5 hours away, Oklahoma, Louisiana. We've got them coming from all over for that elite level. So, they've got to get bigger, faster, stronger on their own. And if the parent is forcing them to do it, then they're missing the core part of heart that you can't measure on a combine. You got to measure that in a game.
Well, I also want to go down this road because you're the perfect, I think, kind of advocate for this. College athletics is also much more mental, as far as the stress, the strain, being competitive, having to execute, having to perform. Because the amount of games that are going on, the travel, the academics, the social life, the expectation, the weight of expectation. There's a big mental burden on college athletes that we don't talk enough about. We've spent all of our time throughout those early teenage years working, get into high school. We look at all the accolades and validations. But when you get to college, you either can or you can't. You either did or you didn't. And that mental weight of expectation. Can you talk a little bit about that from the female sports perspective? And college coaches really take that into consideration when they're recruiting a student athlete.
Absolutely. I'll give a little disclaimer. I'm a baby boomer, not even a Gen Xer. So I was raised in a different environment, right? I was raised by a father who played football in college and said, if you don't run track, you're not an athlete. So, we were running AAU track from age 7 until 10, right? And so that basis behind it, I've never made excuses for anybody. You either love it or you don't. But there is a mindset shift. And I think what happened is social media. We talk about it more. And in Spanish, we call them pobrecitas. I feel so sorry for myself. Instead of saying, what is this teaching me and what do I do with it? So I've partnered up on my site. You click my partner page, a whole bunch of people that have a different spin on the mindset management. I think you should get ahead of it before they get out there. So if you're going to get hitting lessons, you should have a mindset coach. You should have a trainer, a physical trainer talking about the body movement and preventing injury. There's so much to being an elite athlete. And I don't care what level. You are an elite athlete if you're one of 8,000 student athletes that gets to play softball at any layer in college. So I don't think we do enough of that. And then they'll go, well, the college coach or the worse, the high school coach hurt my feelings and they don't like me. And they're automatically right sizing themselves over here that somehow they were victimized. I don't see that as victimization. I see that as a challenge. I don't believe in bullies, and people will come with me on that one because they're like, but my daughter was bullied. And I'm like, no, they're not bullied. They're being mistreated by somebody who needs to be right sized. Like, I'm a Karen, okay? I'm going to be the first one to say, sit down and stop it. And let's take charge of that. This next generation, the parents are coddling them. Good book, The Coddling of the American Mind. We've got a generation of kids that have been raised up in school differently, raised up on the softball field. Everybody gets a trophy, all those things. So now they feel picked upon somehow, that it's personal and it's something against them, instead of, hey, I'm being challenged and I'm being told that's not good enough. And what do I have to do to get better? And I think that's where you need somebody like you and me guiding them through the process to help them on their individual path. I mean, I think it's awesome. You wrote a book. I wrote a book too, and it was the most treacherous experience ever, because one, you don't make any money writing a book,
None.
and you give
Right.
all this free information, and then people run out and do whatever they want to do. So I say stop taking free information from people because they're not engaged in your individual student athlete.
Well, okay, you just made a great point. I'm going to end on this topic because you and I, when we start talking about books, information, resources, I find it fascinating that more parents want to follow other athletes' paths as opposed to creating their own path, having their own journey, their own advocate. They want to follow these other, but it might not be leading you to the right destination. So
Correct.
ultimately, I think if you could share with parents, specifically with softball, because softball and baseball, from a travel perspective, you have your elite events. I hear every college softball coach talks about Colorado, 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 Colorado. If you can play in Colorado, if you can perform in Colorado when the bright lights and the big eyeballs are there, baseball has something similar to that in Jupiter, Florida in October. Talk a little bit just about the need for parents to truly choose their own path, or more importantly, their student athlete to choose their own path, because this is
Yeah.
a once in a lifetime experience for the
Uh,
teenage athlete.
Yeah, I absolutely. You get me so excited. I have so much to say on it. There are absolutely the right showcases, the right competition. But I think number one, you should go to events that actually have a winner and a loser, because these parents need to see if this kid can compete on the field. Showcasing is showcasing. I think you can mix it up a little bit. But man, I teach our student athletes, when you go to camp, you're going to a tryout. So it's a mindset shift, it's a physical shift, and it's an approach shift, right? And we give them all kinds of training. In fact, I'm doing my training this Sunday. So that is one. But the events I'm going to have diversification in it, because again, not everybody's a 1.5%er going power four. I am going to Tulsa Elite, one of the best events in the Midwest that has been going on for years. It's one complex, 12 fields, lots of coaches. I think he reported to me he has over 60 coaches already registered, but very few Division One, because they're still in the College World Series. Is kind of overlapping there, and sometimes they need a break and they got to go home and manage the portal for a week. Then the next one is Top Gun in Kansas, and that one had over 100 coaches in all categories, but they do cater to the top level teams. It's not something easy to get into. And then the two of my favorites that are coming up is Top Club in Oklahoma. I think then you don't have the sanctioning bodies fighting as much. Oh, is it Alliance? Is it PGF? There's, big political shifts and fights over which sanctioning body is the best. They're both really, really good, and top level teams go to both. But they kind of throw their guns down and they come into Oklahoma, and they battle at the top club and it's run by the Oklahoma A's, which I love, the Madden family. And then we go straight into Colorado. There's 2 weeks of Colorado. So there's
Right.
Patriot games and elite showcases that you have to be good at and you have to be there. And then there's that last year there was over, and I'm going to quote it wrong, but this was my estimation, there was over 1,400 travel teams, over 400 fields, and 5 different sanctioning tournaments. And they all have their own app. I mean, I help the college coaches find the kids with my events page, right? Are they in IDT, which is the other one I said, Oklahoma A's top club, and IDT, I think, are the best talent face to face. And it's not a sanctioned body thing. And you don't have to play because your club only plays Triple Crown, or your club only plays Alliance, or your club only plays PGF. I think you have to be neutral to it. But I think you have to follow some of the things. Like if you go to qualify for Alliance, you're going to make it, but they're just going to tier you out. Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And then if you win, you win tier 3, then you're the 500th best team in the country. But people don't hear that, right? Oh, we're the winners and they got their banner. But they're of tier 3, which is no shame, but they're winning where they can win, right? But it's not necessarily the top layer. So I think you really have to have some advice. It's gotten bigger. It's gotten a big money grab. I think my husband was saying over 60% of his budget for 8 teams is tournament fees.
Right.
And then you've got non-parent coaches, and you've got travel and hotels. They went up in COVID and they never came down. So, you're talking $200 a night in hotels, and we get in our cars. I go to the College World Series, and I don't come back until our hosted tournament in the middle of July. Then I go back to California for 2 weeks for PGF, because you got the youngers and the olders competing, back-to-back weeks. So it is literally a 90-day event, and the college coaches go, oh, well, why aren't they coming to my camp? Because you can't camp during the only 7 weeks of the year that they actually get to compete in front of you. And the good coaches get it. And I'm challenging the ones that are still hosting, and you should host your tournaments. You should have camps. You should make money for your staff. The staff should make more money from the university. Just saying, that's my plug for college coaches. But the real events are in August, in January, in December, when they're bringing in the talent that they've evaluated and they've identified, and then they compete for the job.
Well, obviously, if you're a fan of Cheri, you want to find her at Collegiate Sports Advocate, CSA. I'm going to have the website, as I will always. Anything that has to do with softball will have Cheri's website information, contact information, both the podcast as well as the YouTube video. You can find her. She is a huge TikToker. Something I am lacking or lagging currently, but looking into. But Cheri, again, until next week, I want to say thank you for taking the time. I know you're one busy bee, and I appreciate you taking a few moments to share with parents and student athletes a little insights with regard to college recruiting with female sports.
Appreciate you. Thank you as always, and thank you all for listening.